You're listening to the Office Free Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Spencer, and each week I'll be taking you behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who have escaped traditional offices and built digital empires based on their expertise. All right, everybody, welcome to the Office Free Entrepreneur Podcast. I've got one of my dearest friends, the infamous Giro, aka Greg Rollett, who is a business owner that I've known, for years now, I think, like 7-8 years at least, if not longer. And Greg owns the Ambitious Performance Group, and they help entrepreneurs do a lot of really cool stuff. But Greg's got one of the most interesting backgrounds, everything from being a rapper on TRL to owning different videos, shooting documentaries for celebrities and everything else. And we're going to kind of jump into his story a little bit that has kind of gone all over the place. And it's kind of cool to see how, despite, setbacks and things taking longer at times, he's still been able to create a really neat business that helps make a big dent in the world. So Greg, why don't you tell everybody about what Ambitious Performance Group does and how you make a dent in the world?
Yeah, man. Well, first, one thing to clarify, I was never on TRL. I did perform at Madison Square Garden, which is arguably cooler, maybe not cooler, depending on how old you are. But yeah, man. So today, really what we do at ambitious.com is we help entrepreneurs to do three things. We help them to perform at their peak, to be in that peak mental, physical, and emotional state so that they can do the second piece, which is produce legendary work. As entrepreneurs, it doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, what you sell. You want to create something that, you might not call it legendary, but you want to create something good that you are proud of to put into the marketplace because you know it's going to help people. And when you're performing at your peak, when you are producing legendary work, content, products, campaigns, all of that good stuff, well, then you're going to profit in a way that allows you to live an ambitious life, because I am a big believer in the anti-hustle and grind. Like, look, there are times in our life where we got to push it, we got to redline it, we got to do those things. But if that's how we're living our life 24/7, 365, I don't think that that's a life. Brad, you and I, we both got kids, young people. I love hanging out with them. The first thing I said when we hit record was, hey, man, I got to be done at the top of the hour so I can go play baseball out front and run around with the kids out back. So performing, producing, profiting, all in a way that helps people to live more ambitiously. That's what we're up to, my friend.
So taking things back to the beginning, one thing I always like to find out is, what was your childhood like, and how did that really prepare you to be a business owner along the way? How did that journey start?
Yeah, I was your typical athlete kid. So I was playing Little League in the spring. I was playing basketball. I grew up in down south in Fort Lauderdale, just outside of Fort Lauderdale, in a city called Tamarack. And at the time, the Florida Panthers had just come to life down there. And so we all got into roller hockey. But I was your typical kid, playing sport after sport after sport. And I was never wanting to be just another kid on the team. I always wanted to, not to show off, not to, rub it in anyone's faces, but I wanted to win. I always wanted to be that person that had the ball in his hands when the last shot was coming. I wanted to have the ball in my hands in the bottom of the ninth to throw that third strike. I wanted to have the bat in my hand, to knock in the winning run. I've always just been that way. And I don't know what it is, but I always grew up idolizing superstars, right? So, baseball card collector, had all the Ken Griffey Juniors and the Frank Thomases and the Bo Jacksons and the Nolan Ryans, going back to that era of baseball. And then that transitioned into the music life, which we'll get into in a little bit. But just always this drive, this desire. Now I would call it ambition. Back then I would just call it, that's what we do as kids, to, want the ball when the game's on the line so that I can show the world, almost like show and prove that I can do it, that you give me the ball, I'm going to make something happen. And, I had a younger brother. So he was always, competing with me, for whether it was for attention, whether it was for sports, whether it was a spot on the team. It was a really cool dynamic, man. My young years, right? So Greg that I remember from 5 to 10, 11, 12, was full of so much fun, so much sport, so much competitiveness, so much life, that I didn't really understand that I grew up poor. Like we had enough money to, put food on the table, but now looking back, like all my gloves were hand-me-downs, all my bats were, from my buddies. When they got a brand new one, I got their bat, and I never really noticed that. And at the time as a kid, like, you don't even know, you don't even care. You're just like, I got a new bat, man. You didn't know it was your buddy's like throwaway. And never understood, like just never knew that growing up. My parents just did a great job of making sure that we had what we needed no matter what it took. And I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent now, but you got me like thinking about what this time in my life was like, because I have so many, like, if I could tell you my favorite moments of my life pre-kids, it would be like elementary school. It really would be. The friends that I made then are still some of my best friends now. I got, messenger chats with all of them. And we stay in touch. And it was those bonds that we created back then that were incredible.
Well, I think it kind of goes to show, like, the whole thing about how relationships, starting a life out when you have those real relationships. I mean, a lot of people talk about the competitive side of business, but business is always about people, I think. And at the end of the day, I think that's something that it gets lost on people along the way, that like when you grow up in that environment where everything is like, there's a community, like a real sense of community amongst your friends and people growing up. Because like I kind of grew up in a similar area where like we probably had like more off than what you sounded like, but it wasn't much more. I mean, like we didn't have brand new all things, going to vacations all the time, and all kinds of electronics. I mean, we go years without having certain things. And I think you kind of learn along the way that you've got to work hard and build things, but at the same time, like, people matter, and I think that's really telling. That's the way you grow up. It's very similar to me, it sounds like.
Yeah. Going to this relationship thing, so super interesting. I know we're going to dive into like kind of the next stages, but the friendships and the relationships that I developed early in my life, I didn't do that for a very long time. Let's call it in the middle of my life. So 18 to, let's call it close to 30. I never really had good friends. And maybe it's partly because I lived an untraditional life from like 18 to 30, whether that was, skipping my first semester at school, thinking I was going to go to this music production, music engineering school, and all my regular friends, quote unquote, we're going to university. We're going to the University of Florida, University of Central Florida, and they were going through the fraternity process and all that. And I was like this loner kid who wanted to be in the music industry. Then the entrepreneurial route, at 23, now what, 15 years ago, entrepreneurship wasn't as cool as it is today. Like that was a weird thing to do.
No,
like going into your own business at 23 was super freaking weird, right? Like, dude, just go get a job, right? And so I never cultivated a lot of those close friendships and relationships, especially from like a guy perspective. And even today I struggle. Like there's not very many people in my phone book that I could just call up and be like, yo, want to catch the game on Friday night? Or do you want to come over for a drink? I can count on one hand, the number of people that I can call to do that. So interesting that you brought up relationships, because super strong in the early years, super weak in the middle. And in business, during those, let's call it 23 to 30, I was very much a lone wolf. And even today, like I'm still lone wolf-ish. I've gotten better. I'm still not good, but knowing that other people are there for you and can help you out, like people are there to help you. And it's taken me a long time to come back to that realization.
Well, that's a good point. And I mean, it's something like you and me have been friends a long time. And I always find it interesting because like when I look at you, I'm like, man, he's got some like crazy neat and unique connections. You've done quite a lot of things. Like why do you think that relationship stuff, like as you grew up, like what happened that maybe that you don't mind sharing, like that helped kind of change that from like growing up when everything was relationships to making that switch? Was it just the fact that you were doing stuff kind of outside of the norm and kind of beating your own drum, or was there something that happened that kind of took you away from that early start with more community?
Great question. And I think definitely part of it was the path that I chose, and it wasn't the path that chose me, but I chose it. I'm responsible for all of my actions and everything that I did. And I never wanted to be like the crowd, the herd, the what everyone else is doing. And as soon as I find myself doing the same thing as everyone else, I know I'm doing the wrong thing, right? Or I typically get
Right.
bored, and you know that because you were over the house a couple weeks ago, and I'm telling you about this food business I'm getting in, and the supplement, like, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, bro, you're like one of the best video guys I know, and you're starting a food company. Like, this makes no, and it's just, I just knew that I wanted to do things the way that I wanted to do them, but in a way that put me in a position to where I could give my family the best life freaking possible, so that I didn't have to worry about getting my kids hand-me-down baseball gloves and things like that. And if I was going to do that and put that pressure on my back, for better or worse, whether that's a good decision or a bad one, that's the road that I took. And that's why I went down that path. And I would have rather, again, those 18 to, like, let's call it 30, be at one time in the recording studio till 2, 3, 4 in the morning instead of at the bar, hanging out with the frat bros, right? I would rather have been HTML coding an early website to sell hammocks online than, watching football on a Saturday. And again, that cost relationships and friendships and things, and you become, lone wolf-ish. But yeah, I think it's some of the decisions I made.
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, because that's something I think, like, a lot of people can resonate with that journey. I mean, like, for me, my version of that slightly was moving sophomore year across the country, where my dad was a professor at a university, and I was able to get into a Big Ten education for a pretty good amount of discount because he worked there, but I didn't know anybody. And it was kind of like, there was a while there that growing up in the Midwest, you get used to that whole everybody knows everybody, and when you need something, like, you always got a guy to call, right? And then you switch to a different lifestyle, and it can take a while to get back to that. So how do you feel like that's, obviously, I know a lot about your story, but do you feel like at some level, like, I feel like that's changing for you? Like, we've known each other a long time, and I've noticed more and more, like, I mean, you and me have had a lot of private conversations around, like, affiliates and getting partnerships and things like that. How do you see that changing now with some of the stuff that you're doing now? Because I definitely think, we've talked about this, off the air, but I know you're going to need some partnerships for the stuff that you're working on now and different connections. Like, what are you preparing for to make that a little bit easier for you in the future,
Yeah.
you think?
So one is just not being afraid to ask for help, and knowing that, like, the worst thing that happens is someone ignores you or says no. And, it's still interesting because sometimes I don't even know what to ask. And this is a big conversation you and I had a couple weeks ago, was like, sometimes even when I want to ask someone for help, I don't even know what to ask them for help, right? Because I've never been that way. And I think just putting the ego aside, putting this facade of, like, all right, well, Greg's had success over the last decade and done these things. Well, I'm in a new arena. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Putting that pride to the side and just being like, hey, man, I need some help. And, I've, going into this kind of the ambitious performance line, I've had 3 great conversations today with people who, they have no idea who I am. They don't know my background, but I just reached out to them. I'm like, hey, I saw you just launched this really cool coffee company in Cairns. How the heck did you do that? Let's just chat. And being able to just cold outreach to people, it's super weird for me. It's still super strange. It's still, and I get on the phone and it's still awkward for the first 2-3 minutes, but then, it's not that scary once you get into it. And so, for me, it's putting ego and pride to the side. It's being okay with people seeing me start up again. It's okay with people being like, I thought he was doing really good. Now he's starting this weird thing. Like, I don't care, because I know what I'm doing at the end of the day is something that's going to help people. That is what is best for me, what's best for my family. And, look, at the end of the day, nobody really cares what I'm doing, right? Like, I'm not that cool. Nobody's at home thinking like, man, that Greg guy, man, he's doing some weird stuff. Like, no one's thinking that, right? And once you figure that out and put that to the side, it becomes really easy to, hey, Brad, I need some help. Hey, John, I need some help. Hey, Matt and Joe, I need some help. And that has made it really, really cool to see, is just, there is nothing on the other side of that ask that is scary. And so that's kind of how I'm approaching it right now.
No, I love that. And I'm glad you say that, because that's, my favorite part of the business. I mean, it's, the main reason why I enjoy this show so much is like getting to talk to people and finding out about their stories. Like I talked with somebody recently and found out they uh one of their first businesses was making concrete blocks out of a machine that they built, like rigged up, and they sold that before and after school, like to build things with, like buildings, like little homes and stuff like that. And this person, as like I think he was 12 years old, built machines, and I'm like, wow, like what are the odds? And he's like, oh, you just had to figure it out and ask for help. And then I hired kids to help me sell more bricks. And I'm like, wow. So like you run a technology company and you were a brick maker at one point. I mean, it's kind of random that everyone has that journey, which I mean is a good point, right? Because I think a lot of people think everybody else is paying attention, and it's kind of neat that as easy as it is to find people now, it's also like it gives almost a sense of like an anonymity, because like there's so many people to pay attention to, right? So, I know, one thing I'm curious about, and I think this is, it's a little bit of a digression, but I think it's a great example for people, is like, you've always been like the front man with stuff that you've done. Like, you're a performer. I mean, I've seen you perform and you do a real good job at different things, being on video, all this different kind of stuff. How do you like, when someone like maybe, let's say, is an introverted person. Like there's a lot of introverts that want to start businesses. And I think you actually told me one time that you kind of see yourself as a little bit like an introvert. Like, how do you like reconcile that desire to perform and be the front man while still being kind of introverted? I'm curious about how that works, like in your mind, and maybe we can like talk about that for a second. I think,
I don't think I'm like kind of like a little bit introverted. I'm all the way introverted. Like I don't enjoy, in the pre-COVID world, going to a conference like one of these big marketing conferences that has like 4,000 people, and it's like the big networking event of the year. And like I've never gone to one of those because I would literally have a panic attack and probably stay in my room the entire time, because it's just it's overwhelming. It's too much. Like I do not enjoy it. So what I've found that works for me, and it's been working for me for a really long time, is the easiest way for me to have conversations with people is for them to approach me on something they want to ask me. And then it puts me at a comfortable position, because now I just have to answer a question based on something they wanted to know about me or my presentation. So how I did that was I got on stage, right? So first, as a musician, I got on stage after the show. People come up, oh man, liked your band. Can I get a CD? That's an easy conversation to have, because I've already set the pre-frame. I'm the musician. I wrote the songs, like, whatever it is. Then it became speaking. So I did a lot of speaking early. I would go to any speaking event I could. Like in Orlando, they used to throw these like bar camp events, and it was like an unconference where anyone could go and like put a topic on the board. And I would always fight to put my name on the board as one of the first speakers of the day, because I know if I spoke at like, let's say the 9 a.m. spot was like the first or second speaker, now if people saw me talk, they might approach me all day and ask me about my talk. So I never had to have like that awkward conversation. They would be like, Greg, I saw your talk, man. That was awesome. What did you think about this? Or like, and now it's an easier conversation because someone's approaching me. So as I grew businesses, I just then applied that to media. Well, I could do a video. Now I don't have to talk to anybody. I just got to talk to a piece of machinery and hit record, and I don't have to talk to humans. And I can put that video, I can film it, I can have it edited. So I have control over how the message is portrayed and seen and positioned. And I can put that up on the YouTube, on a page, on the Facebooks, on the MySpaces back in the day, put that out. And again, then people would comment, or people would reach out, or people would go to the landing page. And it's allowed me it's been medicine for me, because it allows people to approach me in a way where they already see me as someone of value. And it's not really has anything to do with ego or anything like that. It's made it more comfortable for me to have conversations with people. I hate selling over the phone. One of the most terrifying things to do. So you know what I did? I made people, before they could jump on the phone with me, watch a 15-minute video, then like a 30-minute video. Then they got to like, now when they get on the phone with me, like they already know me, right? They know my kids. They know that I like, doing weird Ninja Warrior stuff. And they get on the phone and they already know me. And that has made it so easy to be introverted in this weird world that we live in.
That's so cool, man. I never realized that was the intention. That's actually kind of neat. It's always fun, these conversations, because, you never know when you're going to learn something new about somebody that, you thought it was one way, and then it turns out that it's exactly different than you expected. So, we've talked about a lot of fun stuff, and I always like hearing the stories about like the misses. And I know you've done a lot of different things over the years and probably have a lot more misses than the average person does. Like what is like a miss that sticks out to you that like at the time it really stunk it up and it really was like frustrating or like a setback or something like that where it was like a turning point, but that it ended up being a blessing in disguise. What comes up to mind when
Oh
I
man,
ask you that?
it's funny. You're absolutely right. So, quick analogy, then I'll answer the actual question. Is I'm a baseball guy. I've brought baseball up a few times today. I love the game of baseball because you get up to the plate and you have no idea what's going to happen. He might throw you a perfect pitch and you hit it out of the park. Unlikely, but it could happen. He might throw you four balls and you walk to first base. You might pop up to the pitcher. You might hit a screaming line drive as hard as you can and someone makes a diving catch and you're out. That's how I approach business. Is like, I'm not going to create one perfect thing and just hope and pray that that's my only at bat and that's the only thing that I'm ever going to create that the world is going to see. I'm going to try to take as many at bats as I possibly can. And the more at bats that I have, the more opportunity to hit that home run, to hit that single, to hit that line drive in the gap, to get a double or triple that I can get. And I think most people live their life opposite. I only get one at bat. I'm only going to get one shot. So I better make this thing perfect. And then they delay and delay and delay and delay. I'm exactly the opposite. I'm a copywriter and I write emails every day with typos, with links that are bad, but it went out into the universe and it made something happen, either good, bad, or indifferent. And I would rather live my life that way by putting things out into the world than by being shy and waiting. So in business, yeah, man, I'll have an idea on a Friday. I'll write some copy for it on Saturday and Sunday. I'll launch it on a Monday and it'll flop, right? And that probably happens 7, 8 times out of 10, and then the 1 or 2 out of 10 that work, like really, really work, which is amazing. So, I've tried, everything from, for our clients, this is about probably like 6 or 7 years ago, or maybe even longer than that. We were trying to do Facebook ads for our clients. And we were doing video and content for them, and they wanted us to run their Facebook ads. And we were like, well, if 3 or 4 people tell you that you should probably do something, and they're willing to say yes with a check, well, you should probably say yes, right? Like that's typically kind of my theory on a lot of things. If this client says they want me to do their Facebook ads and this one, and they're all willing to write a really big check, we should maybe think about doing that. And so we did it. And we took their money and it was absolutely, utterly disastrous. As you can see, my personality is I'm very fast. I'm very quick. I talk quick. I'm thinking in big ideas. And to sit in front of a computer and monitor like 7 financial advisors and their Facebook ads every day drove me off the wall crazy because I don't have that attention to detail. I'm not testing 72 different versions of an ad and one sentence in a copy. And like, that drives me bonkers. And we let a lot of people down. And it was really difficult because we probably added $50,000, $60,000 a month in recurring revenue that we had to just shut down because we couldn't deliver on it. And what it really taught me was, going back to, I'm a big Dan Sullivan, unique abilities kind of guy, doing that, running that kind of business, even though financially it could be lucrative, even though people needed it, we were not the team. I was not the person to go and deliver that. And it really started me to start thinking about, well, what should I be delivering? What should I be doing? I shouldn't be managing people's money like, a freaking day trader. I should be helping with big ideas, big concepts, coaching, like looking at the big things that I can do. And so that was a huge moment for us that, lost us close to $1 million a year in revenue because we were doing things that we should not have been doing. That was probably the biggest mistake we had. And it was a big one.
Yeah. Losing $1 million, and especially in a business like you have where you're dealing with, client work and stuff like that. It's definitely something you can't have too many misses like that when people are paying you money before, it could cause longer term problems. So coming back from that, I know a lot about like what you did with that as far as like, the video production businesses and all the different, people coming in for shoots and whatnot. Did that kind of solidify things as like what you've done the last few years with, having people come to the studio and do that type of work as far as that type of work? Because I know you have a lot of recurring, offers where people are, getting videos produced every month and they're running, in ads and social media and stuff like that. Is that kind of how you transitioned into what you're doing now with that part of your business?
100%. So I figured out that I was really good at coming up with big ideas and helping make complex ideas simple for a lot of my business owners. And then I figured out that I'm really good at, even though I talked about the introvertedness, once a client gets to know me and stuff, I would love for them to come in because I'm going to show them a world-class experience. We had this amazing studio, amazing office, coming into Orlando. It's fun for a lot of clients. And we just built a lot of programs around my strengths. And it led to a better experience for the clients. They loved us. Everyone left glowing testimonials, sending in videos, sending me gifts, and all the things that I was not experiencing when we were doing the wrong things. And then two, they were getting better results, right? So better experience, better results. You're starting to get into your zone of genius and doing the things that you should be doing. And then the second piece of it was I found the right team and the right people who weren't going to drop the ball that I personally would have were I the operations guy, were I that person who was, all right, well, did we get Brad's 3 videos and Joe's 7 things? And did we make that one edit on minute? Like if I had to manage that, the business would have fell apart. So I found a team that could run all of that. And I just got to be, like we talked about earlier, the front man and be client facing, big ideas, lots of energy and keeping the ship rolling that way. And find an ops team that could make it happen. And, that's been probably the last 4 or 5 years, really since then, that we have been doing high-end video production, video marketing, video services for clients up until March of this year when things, changed again. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing. But it was a big thing to, again, play to strengths as opposed to doing what you think you should be doing because that's the easy route. Usually the easy route is not the right route for most people. And it's definitely not for me.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people miss out on that because they're attracted to like the shiny object, type of stuff. And I know, one of the big mistakes that I would say, a lot of people make is, following trends and they're chasing trends, excuse me. And one thing I always kind of think about is like if you're running on the railroad tracks and you're chasing after the thing that's already left the station, you'll get run over by the next thing coming along slightly down the pike, which I think, one of the things I've personally learned, since we've been friends and I've been getting a lot better at this over the years, with much kicking and screaming is like I'm more that perfectionist type, taking a while to get things out the door. And it's actually only been in the last like year or two, I would say, where that's kind of, it's gotten old, I think like as you get, kids and family and stuff like that, and you get to that transition phase of your life where you realize, hey, like there's not enough time to make everything perfect. Like I can always improve it after the fact. I can always make a second take of a video. I can always screw up a little bit on something and chop out like a section of video that looks stupid or something. And I think that's something a lot of people miss out on, especially in that early age when you have like all these things to do and you can just take all the time you want. It's like, well, you don't have all the time in the world. Sometimes you just got to get things done and make it happen, and then fix the mistakes if they come in. So it's a good point. So I want to transition. I always like finding this out because we've hit on a lot of really cool things that I think are valuable, but I always like to ask 2 questions. And this is really relevant to you because I know you spend a ton of time, coaching your kids and doing stuff with them on the weekends and doing stuff with them in the evenings when they're done with school. So let's like sit down for a minute and imagine that we're talking to them and they asked, I want to be a business owner like you. What wisdom would you share with them specifically to make that a much easier journey for them than it was for you?
I don't necessarily want it to be an easier journey for them. I think that's not the right terminology. And I want to set them up so that they can make personally responsible decisions for the life that they want. I want them to see the possibility of what they can do in life. Now, if one of them wants to grow up and, make minimum wage and live a cool artsy lifestyle, like and be, that starving artist, cool. But I want him to understand that he's going to put himself in that decision, in that situation because of the decisions that he made, and he has to accept that. that to me is still being a success, even though he might not be financially successful or have millions of dollars in his, retirement accounts or whatever. I want to put my kids in a position to where they understand that they can do whatever they want to do in life, but it's up to them in order to make it happen. And if I can do that and instill that mindset in them, that if my son Colton wants to go, like he's a big baseball guy. We had a baseball game last night. Like he's 8, right? So who knows? Like the average kid ain't going to the major leagues, but if he wants to go that route, he can make that decision, and he can work hard, and he can wake up early, and he can hit the weights, and he can go to the, do the training, and he can go to the batting cages, but he has to make that decision, right? No one can make it for him. If he wants to go that route, then him. And that's the best teaching, coaching, mentoring, fathering that I can do, is to help him understand that he can have anything he wants, but he's got to do it. He's got to put in the work. He's got to want to make that decision. And that if he ends up, homeless in San Francisco, it's also because of the decisions. Now, am I going to have his back and help him out in any stretch of the way I can? Hell yeah, man. I'm still his dad, right? And I will do anything for these kids.
Right.
But I really want them to understand, like this life has infinite possibilities if you accept that and you go towards it. That if you have grand ambitions, all you got to do is reverse engineer it and you can make it happen. Like there's never been a time where you can make literally anything happen out of dude, to shoot video 15 years ago when I started, holy crap, right? Like compared to what you can do today.
Yeah.
I have this thing, it's in my pocket. It's called an iPhone. I can do anything on this. I can record an entire album on this. To record an album when I was 18 years old in the music industry, I was paying $100 an hour at Danceterium Studios in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And we were spending 4, 5, 6 hours on a 3-verse rap song. So now I can just literally open my phone, buy a beat for $20 on the internet, and we're like, there is no excuse. And that's what I want them to understand. So sorry for the rant there at the end, but that's where I want them to go, is there are infinite possibilities. You just have to figure out what you want and go after it. And if I can help them understand that, I win.
Yeah, I mean, I think that applies really with anything. I mean, whether that's like you say in business or not. I mean, it's almost like there's, not to ever say there's too much, but like it's definitely closer to a world with too much opportunity than not enough opportunity, especially with technology making basically everything like 100 times easier than it was even when we started.
Yeah, I think that's
10, 15
curse,
years
right?
ago.
Especially if you go into like the internet marketing bubble, there's 1,001 ways to make money. That's the problem, is it becomes the shiny object of what do I do? Because I could do, e-com, I could do Amazon, I can create courses, I can be an affiliate, I can do this. And then even in the affiliate world, there's 87 different ways and so clarity on a vision is really freaking important. And this year, 2020 for me, has been a complete refocus, reshift of what the vision that I have for my own life, for my family's life, and for my business life. Really, I got to hit reset and, reinvent myself, if you will. And that's the other lesson, is that if you don't like the path you're going on, you can just reinvent yourself. Who's stopping you? Like your Facebook friends, right? Like if you don't want to be the video guy anymore, you could just not be the video guy anymore. Right? Like that's literally what I'm doing right now. And who's going to stop me? There's no video guy certification that's like, no, you still have to be the video guy. Like you could just reinvent. So anyway, sorry, but that it's just, you're right. Too much opportunity is almost a big problem versus scarcity of opportunity.
Well, and I think that's important. I mean, and I think I already know the answer to this question, but I still want to ask it anyway, and then we can finish up. It's the one I always like to end on. Is there anything, if you could do it all over, that you would do over with what you know now versus when you started in this game a long time ago?
You know what? I'm a big believer in everything that I've done has gotten me to this point, which is obvious, right? Of course, everything that you've done got you there. But I believe that I'm in this position that I am today because of all of those things. And so are there things that I've screwed up on? So it's something as stupid as back in high school, I made the decision that I wanted to be a catcher instead of a pitcher. And I got stuck behind another kid whose dad paid more money to the booster club than me. So he got the starting job over me. Whereas if I was a pitcher, maybe I would got to play college or minor league ball, right? Like little decisions like that have like this butterfly effect on your life. But that decision and then getting out of baseball led me into the music world, which led me to Full Sail, which led me to, go to college with Jen, who was my high school sweetheart. And we ended up in so yes and no, right? Like, I feel like I'm in a really freaking good place today. And I'm really happy today because of everything that has happened. And yeah, do you want to take some decisions back? Of course you do. But they still shape you into who you are.
I love it, man. That's a great point to end on, because that's my philosophy as well. And I really believe in that a lot. Is, everything happens for a reason. And you wouldn't be where you're at now if it wasn't for all that stuff. So I love it, dude. Thanks for taking the time, and I will chat with you real soon. All right. You've been listening to the Office Free Entrepreneurs Podcast. For show notes, extras, and to get the $1 Million Backpack book, where we give you the blueprint to escape your office, visit escapeyouroffice.com.